Let's get to know a little bit more about Duke by inviting into the Suns Live. Steve Wiseman covers Duke for the Herald Sun and the News and Observer. Steve, welcome into Sons of UCF Live.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to be with you.
Talk about the job at 8-4 that Duke head coach Mike Elko has done this season with this team.
Well, I mean, just a dramatic 180-degree turn from what we saw the last two seasons, the last couple of years under David Cutcliffe, who did a tremendous job overall while he was here. He took Duke to 6 bowl games in 7 years before things went really haywire the last 3 years, and they lost 13 ACC games in a row. They weren't competitive at all at the end of last season. And Elko comes in and essentially with a lot of the same players. He brought in a couple of transfers, but it's a lot of the same guys that were struggling last year. He's made them, a competent team again. They don't turn the ball over as much like they used to. When they get behind in games, they have resilience that just wasn't there the last couple of years, and now it's there. And all 4 of their losses have been 8 points or less. So they've been in every game. They won 8, and they could have easily won 10 in the regular season, which is an amazing thing at Duke, considering they've only had one 10-win season in the entire history of the program.
Steve, when you look at Duke's numbers, it's not hard to see Riley Leonard jump off the page at you. 31 total touchdowns from the QB position. What does he do really well when he's playing well? And if there's a hole in his game, have you observed anything in his game where maybe there's something UCF can exploit?
Yeah, I mean he's really he knows when to pull it down and run, and when to stay in the pocket a little longer and try to make that extra pass. I mean, he really it really surprised me, to be honest with you, and a lot of people coming in. He started one game last year, and it went terribly bad against Virginia Tech, 47-10 loss. And so we really didn't know what to expect from him coming in this year. And frankly, Elko and the staff here didn't either, because of what they saw in the spring. They were a little uncertain, and Leonard kind of enjoyed the fact that everybody said Duke had the worst quarterback room in the ACC because everybody else had somebody coming back or a 5-star recruit or something. And so Riley has really taken that chip on his shoulder and turned it into really an incredible season. I mean, he's a very good runner, like I mentioned earlier. And sometimes I know this might be a cold weather game. They had a cold weather game up at Pitt next to the last game of the regular season, and that didn't go very well. Riley is from the Mobile area, South Alabama, so not used to really cold weather, and that game didn't go well. So that might be something to watch for. I know, obviously, UCF isn't used to cold weather either, but as far as Riley Leonard not having a good day throwing the ball, that might be an area we can look at again, because that game didn't go very well for them at Pitt.
Tell us about some of the other weapons on offense. Is this primarily a passing offense? So if you guys are forced to run the ball, you have a bell cow running back, and tell us a little bit about the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, mainly the best part of the offense is the running game, because Leonard, runs the ball so much. Duke was averaging, they were second in the ACC for the longest time this year, averaging about 210 yards a game. And they had some injuries on the offensive line. A couple of the running backs, Jordan Waters and Jalen Coleman, were banged up at different times. So the last 3 games of the regular season, they kind of fell off a little bit. They had 3 of their worst rushing games of the year. They still won 2 of them, but that kind of brought their average down. So Jacob Monk is back playing after missing the last month or so. The extra time off for the bowl game allows him to be back at practice. That's the starting right guard, who's a 4-year starter now. So that's going to help him there. Jalen Coleman and Waters are all healthy again. So they don't have one bell cow running back. They kind of use it by committee. They one guy in for 2 or 3 series, then switch it out, then switch another guy out, and then Leonard mixes in some running as well. So they kind of mix it up that way. In the receiving area, Jalen Calhoun is a senior, 4-year starter. He's a trusted guy out there. Jordan Moore is really the guy to watch. He's a sophomore who was in competition to be the starting quarterback with Riley Leonard as far as in the middle of August. And they decided that Leonard was going to be the guy. And Moore is such a tremendous athlete. They moved him to wide receiver, and he's really been a revelation. He's been fantastic this year, especially as the year went on and he got more and more comfortable at wide receiver. He's become a big play guy out there. So another guy at wide receiver is Eli Pancol, who's a senior who got hurt midway through the year and didn't play last, I guess, 6 or 7 games. But he's back healthy now, which gives him another kind of, a trusted guy out there that can make contested catches. So they're more healthy now on offense than they have been, in a month or so.
Let's shift over to defense. Of course, for UCF, we don't know if quarterback John Rice Plumlee, who's been battling a hamstring issues, will be playing and healthy in this game. How has Duke's defense fared against a mobile quarterback like John Rice?
Yeah, I mean, they, the defense hasn't been the strength of this team. Mostly, it's been more on the offense. And even though Elko's a defensive guy, he kind of had to work with what he had, with the group that came in, which was, easily the worst defense in the ACC over the last 2 seasons. So they did get better as the year went on. They got better, particularly with the blitzing schemes. Early on, when they would blitz, they'd have some mistakes in zone coverage behind that. That kind of got cleaned up as the year went on. The coaching staff did a great job with that. So you'll see a lot of, a linebacker get back there, or safety. Brendan Johnson, has made some big plays from safety, a lot of TFLs, things like that. Wouldn't expect to see from a safety, but he gets back there and does that kind of thing. So, it's all going to be about discipline and they call it eye discipline, right? You got to make sure who has the ball at the right time and that they don't let, gaps get out there for Plumlee or whoever's, back there at quarterback to have those open lanes, because they played, Kansas earlier this year. Jalen Daniels was a really good running quarterback, and they had trouble with him.
Steve, you mentioned this. They lost 4 games this year, obviously by a total of 16 points. 8 points or fewer for all their losses. In the games that they lost, what was the difference? What do you think the team didn't do to close those games out? Are there things that they've learned throughout the season that gives you hope that if they get into another close game, that they could pull this one out against UCF if they have to?
Yeah, they had some 2 of them I know were penalties, really bad penalties. They had a penalty in overtime, a illegal chop block against Georgia Tech that cost them that game. They were getting ready to go in. They were going to be inside the 10 if that play would have stood to score a touchdown and win the overtime, and that mistake happened. They had a couple penalties late against Carolina in that game that let that game get away from them, and Carolina won late in that one. So that's been it. This is the penalties have been a little more than what Elko and the staff want overall this season. Now it's not, at times they'll be okay, but then they have had those crucial mistakes in those 2 games in particular. I mean, Kansas, they just couldn't stop what was going on there with their offense. I mean, Kansas had a great offense this year, and Pittsburgh again was the cold weather game where the offense didn't play as well.
You think maybe they benefited a little bit from a soft schedule? They played the 2 bottom teams in the Atlantic Division. The 3 losses are to the good teams in the Coastal. What's the most impressive performance they put together all year?
Well, it's the Wake Forest, the last one, because that's the only game they've beaten a team that ended up with a winning record. So that was, that's kind of the way the schedule was this year. And, but when you consider where Duke was the last 2 years, it's hard to nitpick with how well they've done. But yeah, they've beaten the teams they should beat, except for Georgia Tech. That game, that's the one that obviously they should have won that one, given the way Georgia Tech was going and the way they ended up. But they didn't have a challenging schedule this year. They took advantage of what they had. The only upset again they really pulled was Wake Forest, the last game of the regular season. So at least they're coming off of that one coming into the bowl game. But yeah, they have to prove they can beat really good teams, and that's not something they've been able to do this year.
Over the course of this season, UCF has turned to a freshman punter and kicker. What about special teams for Duke?
Jesus, a little nippy out here.
Yeah, Calhoun returns punts. He's a pretty good punt returner, but he had a couple of botches. One particularly against Pitt where he fumbled a punt and cost him a touchdown, which ended up costing him the game. It was early in the game, but he ended up losing the game by a couple of points. That's the kind of mistake you have. So he's kind of all or nothing there. Jalen Stinson's a pretty good kick returner. So if they allow him to return kicks, if they don't kick it out of the end zone or whatever, then he's somebody that can break off one and do some big things there. They're pretty good in the punt game. Porter Wilson is a really good punter. And the kicking game is a little bit suspect. Charlie Ham hasn't been, he was out for part of this year. And, they went with a redshirt walk-on freshman, Todd Polino, when Ham was out. So that's not a strength at all. In fact, they have to, when they're inside the 30 or get, around the 30, inside the 35, they have to end up going for it quite a bit on fourth down because they just don't trust the kickers to make those long kicks. On a cold day, they wouldn't do that anyway. So that's not a strength. But the punting game is, and they got some help in the return game there.
Steve, how big a game is this for Duke? Gus Malzahn has talked about this as an opportunity for UCF to win 10 games this year, which obviously a lot of college teams want to do. Every year during bowl season, you hear all the teams saying we weren't motivated and, all these other things going on. Do you have any sense for how big a game this is for the program?
Yeah, it's just a continuation of this incredible resurgence and turnaround that Duke has experienced. And already a lot of the veteran players, I mentioned Jacob Monk, the offensive lineman, Dwayne Carter, the second team All-ACC defensive tackle, Jamie Franklin, another starting defensive tackle, have agreed that they've already announced they're going to come back and play next year. A couple of them have, the extra year because of COVID. Carter could have gone to the NFL with his talents, and he's decided to come back and play. So that tells you the culture that's going on in the Duke program. They all want to be part of this. They're a part of some really rough seasons coming up to this year, and now they're having so much fun with the success, and they trust the staff so much that they want to come back and play more. So that tells you that how much you're thinking about this game. They want to win this game as a springboard into next year because, Duke's only had 2 seasons with 9 wins or more since 1941. So if they win this one, that'll be the third one. It'd be a big deal for Duke. And then, we talk about the week schedule this year. Next year, the schedule changes in the ACC, and they're going to have Clemson and Florida State, and Notre Dame's a non-conference game. It's going to be dramatically different than this year. So they want to get that 9th win. They want to play really well and then carry that into next year when they know it's going to be even a stronger challenge to get back and win 7 or 8 games.
How excited are the fans for this one? Are you expecting a big contingent to make their way over to Annapolis?
Yeah, it's not a far drive. It's 3.5 hours up there to Annapolis from the Triangle area here. So there's a lot of Duke alums in the Washington, D.C. area and up and down the eastern seaboard. New York City and D.C. are big hotspots for Duke alums. So, they'll have a pretty good crowd there. They'll show out. This is not a program that draws really well at home yet because the program was down for so long. They had a lot of season tickets fall off. But there is some interest in this in the bowl games. Even during Cutcliffe's time, when they had bowl games, Duke, the support was there for bowl games. People wanted to make a trip out of it and make a big deal. And even if they didn't go to many regular season games, they'd want to make a trip to the bowl. So I think that's what you'll see on the 28th.
Steve, if Duke wins this game, what will have happened?
Well, they won't have turned the ball over. They'll win the turnover margin to win. They need to do that, and they'll keep the penalties down. They'll do a good job stopping UCF on third downs. That's kind of been the stat I look at. They give up chunk plays. I mean, a lot of defenses give up chunk plays in college football now. It's just the way it is. But if they get enough stops on third down to not let these long drives go on and get off the field, get the ball back in the hands of Riley Leonard, that's where they really need to make hay.
Steve, we appreciate you stopping by Sons of UCF Live, and thanks so much. Happy holidays.
Thanks for having me on. Yes, happy holidays.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
All right. Good that my brother-in-law brought you the weather report here during Sons of UCF Live as I'm in
Is he available to come on the show, Trace? Is he
over the last hour? This Arctic blast has come in. It was in the 40s a little over an hour ago, and when I checked my phone right there, we are at 0 degrees now. It's going to be minus 16 overnight. So it's going to be cold for UCF up in Annapolis, but nothing like this. Interesting what Steve was talking about special teams play, a little bit more reliable Colton Boomer. But, he still hasn't had that high pressure kick. And how many of these guys have been in a cold weather environment like that? Speaking of Colton Boomer, we've been giving away prizes, compliments of Colton. And this week's winner is Ian Hardos. Who we thank after I get back from the holidays next week after the bowl game. I'll reach out to all of our winners and give out the Colton Boomer merchandise. I asked on my poll this week who's going to win the Military Bowl, what the margin is. UCF by more than 3, a homer crowd there. Bias in that one. We'll get our predictions just in a bit. But let's bring in our guy, Andy Bartsch, who is known as UCFXOS. He has been breaking down plays all season long for us. Andy, you heard Steve talking about Duke. What have you seen on film?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Riley Leonard, that's who the offense is going to run through right there. They're very much similar to UCF in a lot of aspects, similar in the offensive style that they run, and also similar in stats too. Riley Leonard, their quarterback, is also their leading rusher in yards. So you're going to see just very balanced on their side. Wide receivers, they don't have anybody over 1,000 yards. Running backs, they don't have anybody over 700 yards at the running back spot. So they're very, very similar how they're going to get the ball around to a lot of people, but the quarterback is going to be the catalyst of how they make their drives and how they end up scoring.
Andy, can I get a weather update for near you? Trace is obviously very chilly. Mike seems fine. Can I get a weather update from you?
I think it was like 65, 70 today. I don't know.
Okay. Andy's looking good. So is this Duke offense, Andy. Obviously, you pulled some clips that I'll throw on screen from you here, and you'll kind of talk over it. But if anyone's seen the breakdown videos that Andy and I have done on YouTube, it seems like Duke runs a pretty similar system stylistically, at least to what we see from UCF, Andy. Is that kind of fair analysis from what you've seen?
Yeah, 100%. A lot of what they're going to do is they're going to try to option you, and they're going to try to pull the safeties down into the box. They're going to try to make you determine whether you're going to be covering pass or run more. So they're very comfortable even on this 3rd and long. They're very comfortable even just calling quarterback draw. Similar to say maybe what we did against Tulane. They're going to kind of spread you out just to open up that middle lane, and then again they can RPO as well. So they're going to want to have you determine very early on, hey, are we going to try to stop the run or are we going to try to stop the pass? Fortunately, and again, this is maybe a parallel to us, their quarterback has had a little bit of accuracy issues. They've had some explosive plays, but he might not necessarily be the most accurate quarterback that we've seen all year. So I think that's definitely going to be – it's going to be interesting to see exactly. I mean, it's almost like we're looking in the mirror.
Obviously, if you're the defensive coordinator, and it looks like we have openings, Andy, by the way, if you're available, how do you defend this style offense? What do you do against a quarterback who apparently likes to run the football here, but maybe won't be the most accurate passer?
Sure. I mean, for us, especially we know what our base was. I don't anticipate Addison Williams making huge wholesale changes in between, the 14 whatever practices we've had. So I'm assuming we're going to see just decent amount of zone defense. But realistically, I mean, one of the best ways that you can stop an RPO offense is by playing man, by being tight to the routes, not letting them get free and not worrying about what's going on the run side. But being a quarterback who runs, that's going to be another dynamic that adds to that. So I would anticipate that we are going to blitz, and I would anticipate that Addison might try to, bring a little bit of pressure and try to kind of up his name and get the defense excited about him going into next year.
Andy, I know you guys are planning to do the watch along for the bowl game. I already asked Adam this question. Are you going to be drinking during this game? It's a long game. You're going to be breaking down players. Are you doing Jello shots during the game? What's your situation?
Yeah, I mean, if we, I don't know what the YouTube rules are, but yeah, of course we'll be cracking something. So
down here at the Den, we did touchdown shots every time. Are you guys ready? Are you prepared to do that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, we'll have the shots going, Jello shots, pudding shots, everything.
Andy, UCF's guys that won't be there, Devontae Brown, Devon Wilson, who is the bigger loss on defense for the Knights going into this one?
For this game, I would say right now, Devon Wilson. Devon really, he played kind of multiple roles for us. Obviously, he played deep safety, and then he would also come up to the box, and he would play up tight with a tight end, and he would play on the line. He would play almost at a linebacker depth as well. So really, I would say when you get Devon is who's going to be able to handle those multiple roles, and who's going to be able to play deep, who's going to be able to play short, and that's going to be that's going to be a challenge, and I'm not sure who's going to fill that position right now.
And if you're Gus Malzahn and you have a true freshman quarterback and Thomas Castellanos, who I think we want to get some reps in that game, what kind of packages would you try to install for the true freshman? Obviously, he didn't look great in the championship game against Tulane. We saw him against Temple, though he looked a little bit better. What kind of packages would you maybe try to install, or would you do something specific for the series of plays that he's going to run?
Personally, I think just based on kind of what he did against Temple, I would probably put him in for a lot of our jet series, a lot of our jet sweep series, get him a lot of the ability to kind of get the ball on the edge, but also play action off of that. We hit some longer plays against Temple when John Rice was in doing the jet sweeps. And then obviously when Tommy was in as well, he was able to bust off some runs off the backside of those and read it. And I think just helping him get to the edge, I think the younger someone is, it's not always easy to sit in the pocket and anticipate the big hits coming. So sometimes it's easier that they can get out to the edge.
I know today is one of your favorite days. Early signing day, recruiting is one of the things you're really into.
Yeah.
Have you been able to break down some film of some of our latest recruits, and who are you most impressed by?
So I did not on the high school side, but I did for college for the transfer guys, just because obviously it's a little bit easier to get some of their film and then able to actually kind of gauge better how their game is. But from all reports, everything about John Walker, he's supposed to be somebody who actually could play right away. That's not something that you always see from offensive linemen and defensive linemen. They're usually a little bit undersized. Even bigger ones in high school usually aren't quite where you need them to be. But just transferring in, I thought that our wide receivers, I thought that they looked pretty good coming through. And then, wide receiver, I think, is going to be big. And then we also got the offensive lineman coming from Kent State, and being all conference, doesn't really matter which conference you're coming from. That tells me that you are a pretty good player. So hopefully he's able to pick up on the system pretty quickly.
Yeah, on that point, do you like a guy who's played a lot, even perhaps at the MAC level, versus a guy that may be a reserve at a Power 5 program?
From an offensive line standpoint, probably, yeah. From an offensive line standpoint, you see guys in the NFL who have played Division II, 1AA, and they transition pretty well. I think, the further away you are, wide receiver, sometimes it's a little bit easier to get on the field and flash and make some plays. But being, game speed and having those reps and that experience, I think that's hugely important, especially at the offensive line.
What'd you think of Mikey Keene making the announcement he's committing to Fresno?
It's good for him. It's great for him. Honestly, it's Fresno had a pretty good year. I think they went 10-4 this year, or 9-4. So hopefully he's transitioning into a program where he can have that opportunity to win again. And that's kind of the main thing, is that you hope that the guys that you hope that those guys that you're rooting for are able to have success, and they're not taking a lateral step, or they're not taking like a negative step just to try to get, whatever they're looking for. So hopefully he's able to get everything he wants out of this transfer, and hopefully that means playing time for him.
Yeah, their quarterback, Jake Hayner, I think, graduates, so they'll have a competition, it sounds like, and I assume Mikey's going to be in the mix. Andy, let's do a plug for next Wednesday. So, obviously, UCF Duke and the Military Bowl. You and I are going to do a live Manning cast, X's and O cast style watch-along starting at 1:45. Mike will be at parts unknown. Trace will be in a press box someplace. So, we're going to be joined by a special guest host, Brian W. Peterson. Has agreed to hop in as guest host. So buckle up, friends. We'll be live at like 1:45. We'll have some guests on. Andy, I know it's going to be tough to do, but you're going to try to break down some of what you're seeing during the game while we're watching the game. Obviously, we won't have highlights and stuff we can run, but it should be a good time. And if you've got nothing else to do on a Wednesday, if you're not going to Annapolis, Maryland, and why would you, by the way, you can hang out with me and Andy 2 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for it. And, hopefully it's a win for us. Hopefully the guys, I don't know, they were worried about the weather. I don't know if the weather's really going to factor into it too much or not. I think it's just going to be a lot of running on either side.
And for those who are interested, so here's what I want to do, by the way. I want to make this interactive. So for Sons Plus members only, maybe, I don't know, I will send out a link to the stream. And if you're watching the game and something happens, you want to get in and talk to us, kind of like a radio show, just feel free to hop in whenever you want. So I'll send that out to a bunch of people. So if you're interested, if you're watching the game and you think you might want to join us, feel free to send me a DM. I'll send you a link. You can kind of hop in and share your thoughts while it's happening. So we'll try to keep it clean for the kids out there. Mike may hop in someplace from parts of New York, so it should be a good time.
Yeah, we got 4 hours, so the more the merrier.
We got a lot of time to kill. We're gonna have to, bathroom breaks. We're gonna have to figure out a lot of logistics.
There's a lot of TV timeouts just in general when you're watching it
A
live.
lot of
so,
logistics. A lot of
yeah.
logistics.
Well,
You may need the Jello shots for 4 hours
Yeah.
of that. Andy, thanks so much for being with us on Sons of UCF Live this week, and good luck in that watch along, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you so much, guys. I'll talk to you soon.